The cartels have one fatal weakness: their dependence on lies. They are organizations built on secrecy, fear, and the deception that they are untouchable. When the United States or its allies move, that illusion collapses, and the weakness of the adversary is exposed for all to see. This is the story of a failure of camouflage. This is the story of Operation King's Fall and the decisive moment American law enforcement dragged a violent criminal network out of the shadows and into public disgrace. At a glance, the Super Saver food store in Brooksville, Florida, looked like any other local market. The lights flickered over canned goods, and the cashiers worked behind the counter. But that ordinary front was a lie. The store was not a neighborhood grocery. It was a secret cartel drug headquarters, a hub for extensive illegal activities, and a nerve center disguised as community routine. This was the adversary's strategy: hide in plain sight. They believed that routine would be their perfect shield. For nearly a year, a network of gang members and cartel affiliates used this business to run their criminal commerce. They transformed a staple of the community into a fortress of brutality. This was a bold and deeply arrogant move. The adversary believed that by blending in, they could operate indefinitely. They were wrong. Their greed and their reliance on violence exposed their weakness. Inside this supposed grocery store, a criminal economy thrived. The back rooms were not for storage. They were logistics centers for a cartel. Fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine were trafficked through these rooms. Illegal gambling flowed through slot machines hidden as sweepstakes games. The store became a laundering mechanism for drug profits, blending dirty money with daily sales. They were selling milk and bread by day and meth and fentanyl by night. But the camouflage was imperfect. The community soon felt the corruption. People noticed strange activity at odd hours. Cars pulled in and out in short bursts. Fear began to settle over the neighborhood. This fear was not accidental. It was a psychological tool. The cartel members imposed their own form of rule. They allowed or ignored robberies and beatings of customers inside the store. They wanted the community to learn not to speak. Violence was calculated to feel like background noise, helping organized crime survive in the open. The reputation of the store quickly changed from affordable to dangerous. Everyone knew something was wrong, even if they could not name it. This engineered fear was the proof of the cartel's weak grip. They had to resort to open violence just to maintain silence. Law enforcement in Hernando County began to see a dark pattern emerge. Reports came in, but witnesses were terrified and refused to talk. Sheriff Al Nienhuis noted that fear was keeping mouths closed. Yet, the resolve of the American system was already moving. The sheriff's office and local narcotics units started piecing together fragments of intelligence. They gathered small buys, surveillance footage, and confidential tips. Every clue was traced. Every piece of evidence was documented. This tireless, precise work by dedicated law enforcement showed the unwavering dominance of American order.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
By early 2024, the comprehensive effort was formalized under the name Operation King's Fall. The name was chosen on purpose. This was not just a drug case, but an effort to dismantle an entire criminal kingdom hiding behind a checkout counter. For months, undercover agents worked without rest. They watched, they listened, and they blended into the background. They tracked who came, who went, and who handled the cash. They were studying the adversary's movements, waiting patiently for the moment to strike and secure a complete victory. This long, quiet investigation was designed to force the cartel network to expose itself fully. The operation was intense, but the adversary provided the final piece of evidence due to their own arrogance and reliance on force. The violence that served as their tool became the trigger for their downfall. The operation escalated when a single, brazen act of public violence ripped away all pretense. A customer, allegedly showing disrespect, was attacked inside the store. This individual was beaten and pistol-whipped in broad daylight, right in front of witnesses. That crack of the gun through the air was the sound of the cartel's illusion imploding. This was the cartel's near-miss moment, a crucial, fragile piece of timing. Their instinct for control betrayed them. That violence did not silence the community. It shouted the cartel's presence to the entire world. The assault was not just a crime. It was a declaration of dominance that was captured in public view. Once that happened, the illusion shattered. That public exposure triggered the final phase of the investigation. Fear turned into fury, and silence was replaced by cooperation from the community. This sudden public exposure drew the exact attention the cartel feared most: law enforcement coordination and intense media scrutiny. The U.S. response became decisive and inevitable. The sheriff's office coordinated instantly with state and federal agencies. They now had all the evidence needed to execute a dominant strike. The raid was conducted with surgical timing and overpowering force. On the day of the raids, Brooksville residents woke to the unmistakable sound of American power. Police helicopters circling overhead. Convoys of armored vehicles rolled through the streets, immediately blocking off access around the Super Saver food store. The area was completely secured. The store was no longer a grocery market. It was a crime scene, sealed off and controlled by the unified forces of American law. Inside the store, the absolute weakness of the adversary was revealed. The investigators found a network that had been operating nearly openly. The scene was an absolute exposure of criminal commerce. Authorities seized significant quantities of narcotics, multiple firearms, and illegal gambling devices. The back rooms contained stacks of drugs packaged for sale. They found loaded weapons, some of which were stolen or modified, which were the instruments of the cartel's violent enforcement. Gambling machines were humming quietly in the back. Tens of thousands of dollars in cash were confiscated, representing months of criminal profit flowing through the community. Every item found was evidence of the cartel's failed attempt to establish secret dominance. When the operation concluded, the victory for law and order was overwhelming. 22 people were under arrest. This was not a minor bust. This was a surgical cut that removed street-level distributors, key figures managing money flow, enforcers, and lookouts. The simultaneous arrests dealt a significant blow to the network's chain of command. This decisive action crippled the structure that blurred the line between organized crime and community life. The cartel members, who had prided themselves on being ghosts among the living, were reduced to headlines and mugshots.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
This exposure caused immense humiliation for the cartel and its associates. They believed they had created a perfect front, a safe base blending into the suburban rhythm. The revelation that their supposed fortress was under quiet, meticulous surveillance for months shattered that belief. The humiliation was complete because it was total: operational, emotional, and reputational. They were exposed not by a rival, but by the ordinary American persistence of investigators and a community that finally refused to look away. This proved that their arrogance was their fatal flaw. They had thought they were outsmarting the system. Instead, they were being studied by it. Inside the cartel's strict hierarchy, this loss of pride is a greater punishment than any seizure. Their credibility keeps subordinates loyal and enemies fearful. When their facade of control collapses publicly, it sends negative ripples throughout their entire network. The grocery store bust showed that their supposed sophistication was overstated. It was absolute proof that law enforcement could trace them anywhere, even into the very heart of American daily life. The psychological damage to the adversary was severe. Their supposed sanctuary was turned into a crime scene, cataloged by forensic teams. Their downfall became a matter of public shame, amplified by media coverage. Videos of the arrests spread online, turning their secret pride into national infamy. The community realized that evil had been hiding in familiarity. This collective realization destroyed the trust that sustains local life and violated the unspoken belief that danger belongs elsewhere. The cartel's safe business model imploded under the weight of exposure. The law enforcement response was deliberate and sent a clear, powerful message across the country. Officials emphasized that the investigation was long, quiet, and designed to wait until the cartel fully exposed itself before the decisive blow. This message was aimed at every similar operation. We are already watching. The exposure did not just dismantle one network. It created paranoia in every affiliate. The sense of security enjoyed by every other cartel front was instantly removed. The Florida bust did not just remove personnel, it removed confidence. The contrast between image and reality is what makes this a decisive victory for U.S. order. A grocery store represents safety, but to find it was a command post for violence disrupts the public's basic sense of security. This disruption was a psychological victory for law enforcement and a massive public relations disaster for organized crime. The cartel lost its invisibility. For an organization built on secrecy, this public exposure is worse than any raid. They lost control publicly. To be publicly disgraced as careless instead of cunning is to lose everything their power was built upon. The fall of the Super Saver food store is a portrait of how deeply cartels attempt to infiltrate the everyday fabric of the nation. This case highlights a disturbing evolution in their strategy to normalize, integrate, and blend in. Experts confirm that this is a microcosm of a growing national trend where cartels exploit small-town infrastructure to hide large-scale operations. They realize that blending in is more powerful than simple hiding. This tactic is efficient, low-risk, and psychologically disarming because people do not suspect evil in places they associate with routine. But the U.S. response validated that organized effort works. It showed that coordinated intelligence, public cooperation, and unwavering vigilance are the decisive counter-tools. The seizure of the narcotics, the cash, and the weapons cut off the momentum of an engine built on human suffering. This takedown was disruption at the root of their operation. It was an act of dominance that left no doubt about who controls the community. The store, which once symbolized community convenience, became a factory of addiction and violence. It took courage from investigators and residents to expose it. The lasting effects of Operation King's Fall are not just the arrests, they are the lessons. The boundary between ordinary life and organized crime is thinner than most believe. But the success also validates that persistence can defeat the adversary. Their arrogance was their undoing. The greatest challenge remains consistency. How many other legitimate establishments are quietly funding organized crime through everyday transactions? The operation left lingering questions about other businesses. These unresolved possibilities serve as a cliffhanger and a call for continuous American vigilance. Today, the Super Saver food store stands empty. Its sign is fading under the Florida sun, but its story is a warning carved into the community's memory. What happened there reminds us that evil does not always announce itself. Sometimes it hides behind the most familiar faces, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true nature. The cartel's strategy was deception, but the American response was the undeniable strength of truth. The Florida bust was a decisive victory for law enforcement and an existential humiliation for the cartel. It is proof that their empire of shadows can be dragged, blinking, into the light. The cartel can hide, but they cannot survive when the full weight of U.S. competence and order converges against their lies. This dominance is inevitable. This takedown was just the start. The fight isn't finished. On your screen is the next video. Click the video, it opens right away, and you'll see the cartels crushed even harder.